I had a friend, I mean, this was 10 years ago, but her brother got pulled over because he was driving drunk, which is not good. On the Austrian countryside, though, it's hard to get anywhere because there are no buses. And he got pulled over by the police, and the police took away his license and said, pick it up tomorrow and drive home. So he drove home. And I'm just like, and I say
What's
that.
the point?
Exactly.
Hello, welcome to Comedy with an Accent podcast. I'm your Taiwanese comedian, Guan Wen. I interview comedians who perform English stand-up comedy but who are not native English speakers, or they can have a very distinct British regional accent. This podcast is all about comedy, about accent, about languages, and about the comedy technique. So stay tuned if you're interested. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Comedy with an Accent podcast. To accommodate my guest today, I'm going to briefly switch to a different language. Please bear with me. So, heute freue ich mich ganz besonders noch einmal eine deutschsprachige, mein zweiter österreichischer Gäste zu haben. And that is Alice Frick. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Although I had a grammatical question. My very first Austrian guest was Hubert. So in German, you have to differentiate between a male guest and a female guest, right? And a Gast and a Gäste. Or is that a plural?
Gäste is plural. So Gast is actually, we have 3 articles in German, male, female, and it. And Gast is... Gast is actually
der Gast. It's
male,
not das
yeah.
Gast.
Yeah. Mein Gast. No, it's all... I have to think now. You confuse me.
Yeah, I confuse you. No, my mistake. I thought, because I quickly checked dictionary, because you have, for example, a male citizen, eine Bürger and eine Bürgerin, right? Mm-hmm. And you have eine Präsident and a Präsidentin. Yeah, something like a Kanzlerin. So you have all this male and female, and I thought you would have a Gast and a Gästin. But when I quickly checked, there was no Gästin.
Yeah, it is interesting. Why do we not have female Gast? We don't have a female guest.
Because in the old days, women were not allowed to speak, so they were never invited in a German-speaking.
Yeah, we have never gendered that.
Much as we enjoyed this bit of conversation, it might get edited out in the final bit because we're just too linguistic, too much about grammars of a foreign language to the liking. Even for this podcast, people don't want to hear about grammar so much. But welcome. Guten Morgen, Alice. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm drinking my coffee and waking up.
With oat milk, I've noticed.
Oh, yes, oat milk.
Let's start by talking about the gig you just did the past Sunday. A week ago, our very first Austrian guest, Hubert Meyer, I think was episode 8 or 9, he organized a German comedy show in London. These German-speaking people are getting out of control, Brexiters. You need to control that. They are operating German comedy on your turf. Anyway, Alice was one of the performers. And the funny thing I commented on, amongst the lineup, there was one British that performed in fluent German with an Austrian accent, and the other one with a broken... Because we were talking about this on the way here. I say, Alice, that is so Germanic of you. You don't sugarcoat what you want to say. You just say, yeah, her German was broken. I mean, an English person, when I say, yeah, her German was serviceable, but he just like, yeah, her German was broken. But it was cute.
But it was very charming.
Yeah.
It was absolutely brilliant. And it was really nice because the audience participated. So they really worked together.
They actually feel part of the show. The thing I want to comment it on, Austria's population is about 1/9 or 1/10 of Germany's.
We have, how much does German?
More than 80 million.
We have 8.5 or almost 9.
That's what I'm saying, somewhere between a 10th and a 9th. Yeah, this German-speaking comedy show rely on 2 Austrians and 1 German-speaking British lady with an Austrian accent to make it happen. The only German guy on this show is from southern Germany, my old-time shop partner, Samuel Herzönig. So I just thought, where are all the stereotypical northern German people?
They got Brexited. They got all Brexited. That's why we have to get the English-speaking people, the native speaker, we have to teach them German and get them on the show.
Yeah, to interview my first German guest, I had to fly to Germany to fight one. I mean, come on, there are 80 million German people, and in London, such a big German community.
I don't know. Well, but then I'm not saying anything bad about German comedians or German comedy, but I...
That was such a setup. I'm not, but now the but is coming. But
no, I have to do that because I'm Austrian. You know, Austria and Germany are always on fighting terms. No, but I love German comedians. There are great German comedians.
Give me the but. I just want the but.
Well, I think, for example, there might be not as many German comedians out there as we think.
In general, and we want why?
No, they are funny. No, it is interesting because I gigged in Germany a lot.
I couldn't tell whether you meant it or it was an irony.
No, it was an irony.
I thought so.
I gigged in Germany a lot, and it was quite funny because being from Austria, they always think we are like the Alpine folk, we're a little bit
mountain
stupid,
people.
The mountain people. And when I gigged in northern Germany, I went to a gig and I tried to find my way. A woman was on the street and I said, do you know how do I get this bus here? And she said, go straight ahead to the left. And she was like shouting at me, but she was really friendly actually in her terms.
Yeah.
But for me, it was quite overwhelming because sometimes German people seem quite strict, but they are not. But for the Austrian people,
You're saying even for you, the northern German accent was so scary that...
Yes.
So you think that Trevor Noah didn't overdid it by doing the... Although Trevor Noah was doing after his father's accent, which was Swiss German, so technically the more mountain type of German.
That's more mountain
Can
type.
you even wear that badge though? Because you're from Vienna.
Yeah.
Vienna is in a lowland, in a valley. And the fact is, the mountain Austrian hate you guys.
I know. I'm in a tricky situation. Well, some of my family comes from southern Austrian, and that's literally in the middle of the Alps.
Exactly what city folk would say. It's trying to trace it back to the older generation. I was at my Austrian ex-colleague's flat just to watch Eurovision. I thought I need to bring some European snacks. So I got some Tyrolean speck.
Oh.
And she froze when she saw the Tyrolean stuff. And I was like, why? And her boyfriend told me, because she was bullied in Tyrol because she sounded Viennese. And the Tyrolean didn't like the capital city people. So she had really bad memory of Tyrol. I was like, what? It's just one country. Aren't you supposed to be all be happy like the Von Trapps and Maria in the
No, we have a lot of rivalry in Austria as well. There is Burgenland, for example, that's east of Austria. We make a lot of fun about them. Then there is a rivalry between Carinthia and Steiermark, where Arnold Schwarzenegger's from. So there is...
Carinthia is like the far-right stronghold, right?
Yeah, that's where my family is from.
So they are the reason why Jörg Haider was able to be elected.
I know.
And Burgenland is basically the leftover German-speaking people from the Hungarian part of Austro-Hungary Empire. Is that right?
Yeah, it borders Hungary.
It just looked like the extra fat you would trim off when you... Okay, that's a bit too on the nose, and it's too remote from most of our listeners that are based in the UK and the US. So I will probably cut that bit off as well. Alice, how are you today?
I'm really good, thank you.
And I meant it as a genuine question, just rather than a passing remark, because I'm not British. I meant really, how are you? You can tell me the truth.
I tell you that I really struggle with that question still. I've been living here for 10 years, and I either overshare or I come across really rude. I had a meeting. This was like a business meeting. And this person, she asked me, how are you? And I said, good, shall we start now? Because I just tried to not overshare. But then I came across really rude because I just cut her off and I didn't ask back, how are you? I find it...
But yeah, for us international people, which one is ruder? Answer that question abruptly by cutting them off, or for someone who asks the question without the intention of knowing what we really want. But they don't ever see it as a question. They see it as a greeting. Like, how are you?
Yeah.
When I learned English as a foreign language, we were told you need to say fine, thank you. But I think these days people don't even say how are you, fine, thank you. When you say how are you, and the other just reply how are you.
Yeah, they don't even answer.
They treat it like a hi. They treat it like a ciao, basically.
Yeah. I really, really struggle with that because I met another comedian. We met for a project the other day. I haven't seen her in 4 years. And she asked, how are you? And I suddenly said, yeah, well, and I talked 5 minutes about my life and she was really overwhelmed. And she's like, wow, it's so funny. I haven't seen you in 4 years and you literally have shared your life story.
What would an Austrian choose to do in this scenario? You haven't seen someone for 4 years. Do you ask a question? Do you do a greeting? Or is it rude to not even be curious about the other person's life and just say, okay, dann fangen wir an.
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends because if you have a meeting or if you want to move forward, then you don't do small talk. You get right into that. But if you ask how are you, then you just tell how you are and you say like, well,
Small talk. This is what I'm so fed up with. So when I used to work in a corporate job, and British people, they are not punctual. So for example, they have a meeting at 3. Their Outlook reminder would tell them in 5 minutes they have a meeting, but they wouldn't start to react. They still think, okay, I will go at 3. By 3, they would want to go, and I thought, oh shit, I need to get a cup of tea. I need to go to the loo. So when they physically join the meeting, either logging in or arrive at the meeting room, it's already 2-3 minutes late. And they sometimes get lost. They will be there 5 minutes late. And then they already delayed the meeting by 5 minutes. And it's a 30-minute meeting. We only had 25 minutes left, but they still feel obliged to have a conversation. How are you? How's your wife? Or how are your children? And people do actually get into a bit of conversation. And the sometime meeting by 10 past 10 is still not started, and we only got 20 minutes to go.
But I had a similar experience. I sometimes give workshops for communication skills, and there is a workshop I did in Germany and a workshop in the UK. It's the same workshop, but British people, the workshop starts from like 10 to 4. The Germans, they start from 8 to 5, and they are there at 7:30, and they want to have a shorter lunch break. And I'm thinking like, oh God, they just really want to work, and they make you work.
Do you charge by hour or was the same price?
No, it's the same thing, but they just want to get more out of it, and they just want to be like, okay, what can we do? And we have to start now.
Yeah.
They are really, it's quite funny.
But in a way, that's why British has better entertainment industry. Maybe.
I love a good tea break, and I love to start a bit later. That's more like what I enjoy.
Oh, no. Alice, wait until you get out of London to the rural area. They take their tea break so seriously. They went to get a cup of tea and they stay around the kettle for 30 minutes for office gossips.
Nice.
Yeah. They get in, they're eating their breakfast, and just about an hour later, they're already having their morning snacks, and they have lunch, and they have afternoon tea, and they go home around 5. I was like, it's just whole days of eating.
I love it.
Okay, we're going to get back to the language and the accent elements. I'm going to ask you this question. Alice, do you think you have an accent when you speak English?
Yes, I do.
You do.
I have been working on my accent. So I have been taking articulation classes. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but I have been. I find it really hard to get rid of my accent.
So what is the articulation lesson involve? What does it look like?
You just learn the consonants and the vowels. And I have to say, because I lived in LA for a year, and I had
LA,
yeah,
Los Angeles.
in Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and it sounds weird when I say that, but I had an American accent, and people look at me and say like, well, you have a German accent. I can't believe you had an American accent, because I said things more American. You know, I said class instead of class, and water instead of water. So I had a different accent, and I think I sounded more like Swedish or something, more international when I talk American English instead of British English. But I find it quite hard when I try to speak British English, then I sound more German.
So
Does that
this
make sense?
accent you're using to speak with me, is it after the articulation lessons, did your tutor suggest you should settle for more British or more American, or doesn't really matter? How does it work?
Well, I would like to be more British, because now I live in England. Now it would be quite nice to be British. But certain things, for example, we don't have a dark L in German. So my name in German is Alice, and here is like Alice.
Alice.
So I find it really hard. I have to make a weird facial expression. Alice. So, what's your name? Hello, my name is Alice.
So what's the difference between the American pronunciation of Alice and the British Alice? Alice.
Alice. Is that this American?
You just went Valley Girl.
I'm Alice.
Alice.
Yeah, but Americans also have a dark L, I think. But then it's like class, and there is one word I can say in English that makes me sound British. But unfortunately, this word is called parsnip.
Parsnip, like the vegetable?
Yeah.
Oh.
But I sound very British or not?
Yeah,
Hello.
well, to me, yes.
I really like parsnip.
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 You know, the Americanism you just mentioned, it didn't really occur to me, but that's because you have been taking all these lessons. So I've only heard your post-articulation lesson version.
Yeah.
But what you're saying, I can totally relate because I learned American English all my life. And that got a bit of twist after I moved to the UK because I stopped to subconsciously pick up British pronunciation here and there. But the bulk of my English is the Mandarin accent and American English. So it's kind of confusing for some people, even confusing for myself. I've made this point before. People pick up the element that is different. So they will mention a bit, even statistically, it's not the significant one, but it's a different one. American people will pick up some of the words I pronounce in a British way. I mean, they will both pick out my Mandarin accent, but British people will pick up a bit of twang, and I speak English, and American will pick up the British pronunciation of certain word. Let's say Americans say diapers, but if I say nappy, Americans will understand. But they'll be like, have you spent some time in England? And I also noticed, because I have to edit this podcast, some word I would say the American version once and the British version later. So I may start by saying, welcome back to my podcast, but later I say podcast. It's because English is not my natural language. So I spent equal amount of time exposing myself to both, and I don't really have a consistent foundation to...
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think when I was in America, I did articulation classes to get an American accent. So I worked really hard on that, but I completely lost it when I moved to England. It's a lot of money wasted, yeah. And I have to say, to learn a different language, it's just crazy. The articulation book is so sad. The sentences you have to learn are really, really sad. There is one in the TH section, and that's really in my book. It says like, my mother and her 3 brothers think they're healthy, but they are not. And that's a really sad sentence. And you could practice the TH by just saying, my mother and her 3 brothers think they're healthy, and they are. You don't need the not at the end. So it's really sad to learn British articulation because
maybe people who are expert in articulation are dead inside mostly.
They're like, let's throw in their not
But the reason
healthy.
they decided to choose the word healthy is because they want another TH sound, right?
But then why did they add the but they are not? Because you could say, my mother and her 3 brothers think they're healthy, and they are.
Do you think you're being too hard on yourself? Because a Londoner would say the sentence that my mother and her brothers think they're healthy,
yeah,
but they're not.
Yeah, I think that's maybe something I should go with because I tried to learn standard British English and the royal pronunciation, but I should probably just learn the Cockney, my mother and her 3 brothers.
Well, I don't know. I think in the comedy or the commercial world, if you're a native English speaker, it's more of advantage when your accent is specific to an area because it sounds more relatable than a standardized BBC News anchorman English. But if a foreigner like us cannot erase our accent completely, then going for a regional accent can have it unexpected. I don't know how it will work. I mean, I do 1 or 2 sentences like imitating the Cockney accent sometimes, but I tend not to do it. I don't know. You can give it a try.
But I love it if you hear somebody from a different country and they have, for example, a Liverpool accent. I think that's
someone
so
has
cool.
that. Thor from Norway, because he studied in Liverpool. So sometimes he will burst out 1 or 2 sentences with a Scouse accent. That's really, really funny.
I think it's great.
So how often do you meet with your tutor?
It's basically an online class. So
Do you start with does it work?
There are certain things you do to warm up. For example, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, or flip-flops for fat feet. You have some tongue twisters to do. And then you just say words like the big black cat wears a hat to practice day. It's a lot of rhymes. Or like my mother and her 3 brothers think they're healthy.
Do you think you're hard on yourself on the accent front because you had training as an actor before?
Well, yeah, because it would be quite nice. I trained as an actor and it would be great to do some acting roles. But having a thick German accent, you get casted for Nazis roles. That's my career path here. So it's very limiting, the accent. I mean, I just got casted for a sketch where they needed a German speaker, but that's rare because how many, there are enough German. And for German, to play a German, I'm not blonde enough. So
No. You say as a German speaker because it's very confusing here because you're Austrian, right? So you say for a German speaker because they have such a limited understanding of Germanic people, how they're supposed to look like.
Yeah, well, normally German people or German-speaking people, they're more blonde and blue-eyed. So I look a little bit more Spanish maybe with dark hair and dark eyes. But then I have a very German accent. To cast me in a typical German cliché role, I don't really fit. So that's why I try to neutralize my accent. It's going really well.
No. But what I'm saying is this: you don't fit the accents only because in the English-speaking world, the understanding of this culture is so shallow and two-dimensional. Because when I had this recording with Luca Cubani, he said exactly the same thing. He's Italian, but his mom's from Sicily, so his mom a descendant of Viking or something. So Luca's got blue eyes, but he's Italian. He's Italian. When he goes for Italian role here, sorry, you don't look Italian enough for me. So what they mean is that very dark hair, like Dolomio pasta sauce kind of cartoon figure. So they ended up casting Spanish people for Italian role. I think that's just insulting. I mean, people are stupid, but you can still do better than this, right? I mean, that's just I'm sorry to use the analogy, like all German-speaking people are blonde, but Hitler wasn't.
No,
yeah,
he wasn't.
Yeah,
he didn't fit his own picture. Yeah, it's a sad story about Hitler, really.
Finest Austrian export. Anyway, so
yeah, definitely.
I don't want to sound pessimistic, but Alice, I think at our age is a very minority of people that are so good at accent can, but I think most people may not be able to eradicate by taking articulation lessons. If your accent is too strong, people would miss one or two words. I'm sure this lesson helps for you to lessen or soften the accent, but to make it accent free, I think that's way too difficult, no?
Wait, are you motivating me here?
No, I am just saying that...
Be realistic? What? No, I'm not.
No. I think it has its effects. So, for example, one thing I noticed with the German speakers, the OR in German is so heavy, like OR. No. So when they speak English with the German way of doing OR, it's always very obvious. But I think your accent is soft enough already. It's very, very light.
Yeah, I mean, it is not bad to have an ambition to erase it a bit more. But I think for comedy, it works quite well.
Yeah.
I think for my stand-up, it's quite funny because I'm from Austria and I have a German accent. Although I have done some gigs on some countrysides in England and they just looked at me as if I'm...
I would think that a native speaker's ears are a lot more sensitive than we think they would be. A native speaker who are hardly exposed to any foreign languages will be even more sensitive. And even if you get to 99.5% of your German sound out, they can still detect a little 0.5%. And that's what I was trying to say. So sometimes I get complaints about my accent or just minor comments saying, it's funny how you pronounce this. I'm like, it's a very different language. I mean, you guys are being way too picky.
Yeah. Especially Mandarin, I think, is quite a big jump to English.
Yeah, it could be, because it's tonal, so there's a lot of differences. So when I do some sketches and some recording stuff, and there's still comments on, no, it's not quite right the way you pronounce this and that. It was kind of hurtful, but I think, okay, if what the industry requires, my only pet peeve is they only apply the rigorous standard on accents in English, but they are happy to do nonsense accent for other foreign languages just because they don't know what they are supposed to sound like.
Have you seen Catherine Tate, the translator?
No.
It's really funny. She just makes funny about accents, and it's very, very inappropriate, but it's very funny.
So what I found is a lot of British comedians are more than happy to fake a French accent, and sometimes the French accent are not even good. You can obviously pick up and they don't really sound like that. They have that good French accent and bad French accent. Oh, they are very happy to do a generic Russian or a Slavic accent as well, but it's not even done well sometimes.
I think if you do it for comedy purposes, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think if you do it for a film role, it has to be better. But I think that's the thing. People don't cast actors anymore who have a variety of things. They really typecast. For me, it would be just nice to have the opportunity to be a bit more neutral.
Christopher Waltz?
Yeah, Christopher Waltz. He's an Austrian actor.
So he's not accent-free. You can tell he's not an English speaker.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
when you are good enough, they will tailor their roles to you in a way.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for that.
No, I'm saying your accent is not that different from Christoph Waltz already, so
Yeah.
maybe I'm being counterproductive, but don't be too hard on yourself. It's the same with Daniel Brüller. I think his little trace of German twang is still there. Marion Cotillard as well. They're not accent free, but it's still...
Yeah, I think if you have reached a certain level, it's fine. You can do whatever.
Alice has been running one of the longest running LGBT show in London called Laughing Labia, Lachende Schamlippen.
Well, if you translate it in German, it sounds a bit painful, yeah.
I think in English, is still the image can be quite scary in general.
Yeah, but laughing labia is not, because Schamlippe in German, if you translate it back into English, it means shame lip. So that's quite laughing shame lip. I would not call a show like this in German. It's an all-female comedy night, and I've been running it for 10 years. So I'm very happy that it's still going.
Why have you moved from Cuba? Is it because the Phoenix Art Club's a better venue? Is much more cabaret-y, or are there too many gay men in Cuba? You don't like the vibe?
I started off in Candy Bar, actually.
Where's Candy Bar?
Candy Bar is closed now.
Oh, I think it was a Cuba franchise lesbian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I knew the manager and my girlfriend at the time. She connected me, and then it was quite funny because they had a pole in the middle of the stage and mirrors in the back. So it was like, okay, hello, let's do some comedy. But it was a nice venue. It had...
I need to provide a little bit of context. Cuba on Lyle Street in London, they have this sign saying it's an award-winning gay bar, right? And I think about 8 to 10 years ago, it was the place to go to in central London. And they had a lesbian-specific venue somewhere up deeper in Soho. But they used to do this thing called Ruby Tuesday, where they would swap venues. So the lesbian would go to Cuba, and the gay man can go to Candy Bar. A lesbian friend visited from Taiwan, and she took me to Candy Bar. So I went into your den once. And all I can say is I've never seen a bar with so many cultures before. There are just so many cultures and places of sitting. And all the people I saw, they were all sitting there, so hugging and snuggling. I mean, people snuggle in a gay bar, but they don't really... It's such a different vibe. And I thought all you guys need now is more cats in this venue.
Perfect.
It would be a wash, like a bumble lesbian cliche. Sorry. I hope that's not too politically incorrect.
That's right. That's perfect.
So it started with Candy Bar, and Candy Bar closed down.
And then, because it was quite successful there, they took us to Shiba. And Shiba is a great place. It's a little bit tricky to do stand-up comedy there because it's an open bar with 2 rooms and people just go in and out. And it worked at the time, but then I think you can only fit 50 people, and Laughing Labia was growing. So then we moved to Cuba. That was also, I think there were 70 people, and then I sold out that venue.
But
then I just naturally
venue,
progressed.
the space is really weird shape, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a nightclub, but they do comedy nights there. So you can put seats in, but it was always quite a lot of preparation to get the room ready. And the Phoenix is just a ready room. They have their technician. So at Cuba, I was running everything on my own. I sold tickets on my own. I got the mixer as well to run the tech on my own. So that was a little bit more tricky. So I guess it was just a natural progression.
There's a point you were trying to make running Laughing Labia is an all-female lineup and it's a very diverse in terms of straight and LGBTQ plus representation. And the point you're trying to make is most comedy shows you go to, you're lucky to see 1 female comedian, and 2 is almost impossible in the old days. I think in central London you will see more, but outside London, like you have that 1 female comedian, but you are never short of candidates to play your gig.
Yeah, it is, especially in paid clubs. You see, I think in open mics, you see quite a lot of women as well. It's more equal, but in paid clubs, you tend to see more male comedians. And I mean, I love male comedians. There are really great comedians out there. But I thought maybe it is nice to give a platform to women and also pay them for a gig. So they always get paid at the show. And I try to book it as diverse as possible. So to book like 1 musical act, 1 character comedian, 1 comedian, one-liner comedian or something. I mean, it doesn't work out always because sometimes people get ill and then I have a last-minute cancellation or something. But in general, my thought was if I get a diverse lineup with different ages, different backgrounds, then people see the show and they might not like that comedian, but they like the other comedians. So they can never say women are not funny because they just have a variety of comedians. And I think it is not true that women are not funny because that's kind of like saying Austrians are not funny, you know, if people don't find me funny. But
you did just say Germans are not funny. They're just joking. We're just joking.
I'm just joking. No, I had to run that. So basically, that's the aim, just to show a variety. And when people say they don't know any female comedians, it's hard for me to believe that because I've run that show for 10 years. And
I think it was an excellent point you made. So on the point, I noticed that myself because let's say if you find one video or live performance and that comedian is not funny, if that comedian is a woman or a gay LGBT act, you will have the very typical type of men, somewhere between their late 20s to mid 50s. There's specific time men will instantly commented, gay comedians not funny, haha, funny as blah, 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 women are funny. But when it's a really shy male comedian say that, they wouldn't comment it down below and say men are not funny. And if you think about it, what is it about these type of men, they feel like they need to say such a thing? When there's a really shit comedian, I don't think lots of women will try to come out and say men are not funny. You don't feel the need to, or you don't feel the urge to. But why does this, I'm not saying every man, because I'm a man myself, not for some, but gay men are men. So why do they feel the need to attack different types? I think it's from their own insecurity, because they used to say, this is the thing only my tribe, my kind of people can do. And somehow these other people are doing it. A lot of them are doing way better than this pathetic little guy can ever achieve. He wants to show the bravado, but he's not going to be a funny guy. And he just see that the women, the gay man, the lesbian women he looked down on can be a more confident entertainer on stage than he can ever be. And he feel the need to attack them. It's just a little bit sad that this kind of misunderstanding, sometimes they get absorbed by female population as well. It's like you have like women coming to women and say, I don't normally find women funny, coming from a woman herself and say, but you, and they see this kind of comment as a compliment. And I say, no, save that. If you want to say things like that, just chop the first bit off. It's not necessary.
yeah, I think those men, there are some who have an opinion and don't shy away to say that opinion. But it's almost like, I think they might be not self-aware enough. It's almost like people who sit on the tube with their legs wide open because it's quite rude to take so much space. And I think they do the same with opinions sometimes. For example, when I performed in a comedy club, it was an established comedy club and I had a newcomer slot there. There was this one comedian, he was on telly and quite famous people backstage. And this one comedian looked at me and said, you're performing in this outfit? This is not good because you will lose your audience. And he said that to me 5 minutes before I got on stage.
Do you think he was trying to be helpful or he was trying to deliberately shatter your confidence?
Well, I think he was not self-aware of what he was doing, like spreading the legs, you know, because normally you think like, how do I come across? What does that mean? Is that okay to behave like that? And I think some people don't have that filter and they just say what they think without thinking what damage does that do? Because I would never go to somebody and say like, in this outfit you want to perform just before that person goes on stage. First of all, if I have an opinion what people wear, I either keep it to myself or if I think it's so important to share, I'll wait until after.
But do you think he was trying to be a mentor to give you career advice?
Possibly he was just a bit full of himself who shared his opinion that was not necessary to do. With me, it made me it threw me. I came on stage and I was just like, Jesus Christ, I should have chosen something else.
What did you say on the spot to him?
Nothing. I did say nothing. I just got ready and then I went on stage and then I thought, oh my God, they hate me, the audience doesn't like me. In hindsight,
though, if the same scenario happened ever again, what would you say now that you've prepared for the scenario?
I don't know what I would say to that person because obviously there is a status difference, but I would try not to be thrown. I would say like, no, this is fine, I'm okay. Because I think when you're thrown and you go on stage, then your timing is messed up and then the jokes don't work as well. And that happened to me where I thought things that normally work just didn't work out.
I don't think you should put up with it though. I think you can be gently confrontational because British people don't like confrontations. If they cross the line first, you need to let them know and call them out to say that, oh, I didn't realize in 2023 it is still appropriate to comment on a woman's appearance and what she chooses to wear, let alone between colleagues. Things like that. You would not threaten and say, I'm going to expose you, but just made them aware what kind of dick they are.
Yeah, it's true. I totally agree with you. I find it just sometimes difficult when you're in a situation where you're quite vulnerable or just before you go on stage just to say something back. But it is true. It is worth to get something ready for these scenarios.
So my question next is, I think on stage your accent is much stronger. Is that a choice?
It is not too much of a conscious choice. I think I just fall into that. And I realized that it gets very strong in the beginning and it eases.
It does. It fades out.
I'm not sure if it's maybe the adrenaline when I come on stage first or the introduction that I automatically, but I do realize that myself, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I have a strong accent.
Yeah, I wonder about that. And I start to wonder, is it because it's a heightened or stage speak? So I have this explanation, and given the context you gave me, you take articulation lessons, your podcast voice, your accent's really, really light. But your stand-up comedy stage voice, the accent's so much stronger. And I think that's because you have to be in the moment. So you have less time to screen and filter through every single word, how you pronounce it. Like we are talking right now, and while you're listening to me, you mentally have the time to prepare, to think what I have to say, and your articulations lessons will kick in. And so later when it comes out, your accent really, really light. When you go on stage, you just like pa, pa, pa. So it starts really strong and it takes time to settle in.
Yeah, and I think also I have this joke where I say London is very dirty compared to Austria, and before I moved to London, I was actually blonde. So that's the joke. But when I say the word London, I always say London instead of London. But I think because in that joke, I always say, before I moved to London, that's basically the lines and how I remember them. So every time I say London in that joke, I can't even say London because I've trained my brain to say it the other way for these lines, if that makes sense.
My question was always whether it was intentional or unintentional. I think somewhere in the middle, maybe more on the unintentional side.
Yeah, I think it's just how I have my introduction or how I learned my introduction on stage. It is more heightened because it's the beginning of the show. I think I always have more energy to bring the people on board or to say hello. I always start a bit higher, I think, with everything. And then you get into more conversational
There's
mode.
A specific element. In certain moments, you will not retreat or reduce. You are so heightened and concentrated. You become almost like an Alpine Milk Maid. Milchmädchen? Is that how you say it?
Milchmädchen.
There's a little bit of that, and a very, very heightened state. You can even see a metaphorical dindle on you.
Yeah.
Is that on purpose?
Yeah,
Do you
I
know
think-
where I'm coming from?
Yeah, but I think that just fits the text when I say I'm from Austria and that's what we do in Austria.
Yeah.
And, when I talk about that, then I think it falls into place and then it eases off.
But for me, the funny thing is you're from Vienna. Their stereotype of Austria is a mountainous country, the mountain milk maid. So you're from the low valley Vienna, but you play into their national stereotype.
I know, and Austria is not... I always say, like, we have no people in Austria and I'm the only lesbian in Austria, and probably every other lesbian in Austria say, if she comes back, I will kill her. She's telling so much bullshit.
No, it's like the German stereotype is based on Bavarian. So imagine if a northern German who has to fit into the Bavarian stereotype, even though they're from the flat North Sea village or...
Yeah, I do play with stereotypes because it's easy and, you have to address them at some point.
Yeah. So in your version, the stereotype of Austrian is a bit like eccentric, robotic, and naive in a creepy way.
But some things are just true. For example, I have a bit where I talk about getting pulled over and driving license and stuff. And in Austria, on the countryside especially, I had a friend, I mean, this was 10 years ago, but her brother got pulled over because he was driving drunk, which is not good. On the Austrian countryside, though, it's hard to get anywhere because there are no buses. And he got pulled over by the police, and the police took away his license and said, pick it up tomorrow and drive home. So he drove home. And I'm just like, and I say
What's
that.
the point?
Exactly. But this is like the Austrian police. Sometimes they're just like, oh, drive home and pick it up tomorrow. And this would never happen in America or England.
So in your book, when you wrote about the joke you tried to put on the American officer in LA, were they true? Or were they just your inner thoughts?
Well, I got pulled over in America and they said, where is your driving license? And I said, it's in the glove case, and I wanted to open it. And they said, step out of the car, because I didn't know that they thought I'll get
You
my
had a gun, yeah.
So some of it is true.
Okay, so you said in Austria, if the police pulled you over and ask you, have you been drinking alcohol? The second question would be, do you have any left? Is that true?
So it is not true as such, but when my wallet got stolen once, I went to the police station, and the officer who took the notice of my stolen wallet, he was totally hammered. He was smelling like alcohol. He was completely drunk. And I was thinking, this only exists in Austria, that you go to a police station and you find a drunk police officer. I mean, he was not driving, but what?
Is that the officer, they have a sense of humor, or they are taking the piss?
They're taking the piss, I think. So, and again, the police officer who let somebody drive home when they were drunk and just take their license, it's just, that's not...
Okay, so scenario number 2, if an Austrian police officer pulled you over and asked you, do you know why I pulled you over? And if you were to reply, because of the dead body in the boot, would they find it funny, or in real life? Or you never try it, so you don't know?
Well, I mean, this is actually a very old joke, right? I think some Austrian officers might laugh, or they would probably
Really?
say...
I wouldn't ever dare to say that to the Taiwanese, the police officer, though.
Yeah.
Because they inherited the whole Japanese system. We don't joke
You
with
don't joke. I can imagine, yeah.
But I guess for Austrian, an Alpine state that has been neutral for such a long time, police don't take themselves very seriously.
And it depends. If you know a police officer, they just let you drive. Honestly, it is a lot of friendships you have. All about the friendship community in Austria. And that is true.
And that's how Joseph Fritzl managed to survive for so long.
Oh my God.
So I have to
Oh
come
my
back to
God.
Fritzl, the basement. I would say your Milk Maid character is like an instant winner for people who don't know you. But the finer taste of your humor, I will quote this from the book. So Alice has written a book called the Anti-Self-Help Book. And when I look at the title, I thought, is it a parody? The cynicism is there, but it's not as deep as I think it is. And I do think it's a perfect gift for people if you work in a corporate environment. It's a good read, and it's a perfect gift for your colleagues. You say that you get into acting school, but you also had to take a business lesson. You had to study business at the same time. You then say that, funnily enough, I learned more acting skill in my business classes than at acting school. It's a very plain, simple sentence, but it is so funny. It is so funny for people in the business world because they can totally relate to that, even though they are not actors themselves. And that's what I found about the quality of this book. I just feel that you're very still when you're talking to me, but I wonder what your brain is doing because you have so much inner dialogue and all these funny thoughts that you have. I think they are in a more fitting form in this book so far it is concerned. I couldn't tell, but now that I read it, exposed that, some of your more subtle joke makes sense to me.
Yeah, well, this book gave me a platform to just generalize or just to milk it all out. Stay with the theme. It is a collage of what I have, of a lot of material that I have had over the past years.
Weird thought, observations. And
Yeah, and also with self-help, to deal with self-help, because the shocking thing with self-help is that everyone can write a self-help book. It's not a regulated market. And I even bought a self-help book from a priest who wrote How to Be Straight, because he talked about how to cure homosexuality. And when I read that, and in the book, they have a lot of things that are similar to a lot of other self-help books, because he said you have to love yourself, but he just applied it to curing yourself of homosexuality. And I was shocked by that because I thought it's crazy and it needs commentary in a way. And that was also the reason why I called it anti-self-help book, because everyone comes up with a theory how to heal yourself, and some people have to heal their homosexuality with that book, where that's perfectly normal.
you have this joke about you actually take the medicine from the gay healer.
Yeah.
But because the pill is supposed to make it like women, so you just become even more lesbian. And that's a really, really funny joke.
But this really happened. I really went to, because I thought I have to do some research, and I just go to this guy. He has an office in Soho, which is the gayest area in London.
God.
And I went there, and I was really, really nervous because I pretended to have a different name and stuff. And I'm just like, hopefully I remember my name. It's just all so stressful. And I recorded it on my phone. But then I was so stressed that I deleted the recording. So everything went really well. But he said, oh, why do you think you're gay? And I can heal you. And I would pass you on to a female colleague of mine. Just like, brilliant. But I never went back, but it was very strange to do like a therapy session where somebody tries to
But
cure
that's
you.
what I feel why eventually when you do a set, your accent will fade, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Because for the more subtle jokes, it's between the lines, your accent would distract people from appreciating or getting there. So your accent at the start of a gig can instantly establish you. It's very attention grabbing. It's very effective at the start to say, hey, look, I'm up. And obviously very different from all the other comedians you've seen on the lineup tonight. But later, when you get into the more nuanced joke of yours, the accent becomes a liability. Because if you do exactly the same line in your heavy German accented English, people will still notice the accent, but not the fine meaning of the words.
Yeah.
So I think that your creative brain recognizes this. So when you get to the more nuanced joke, they choose to start to regulate your accent so that people can focus just on the idea of the joke rather than the performance of the character. That's my take.
Yeah. And my comedy is quite scripted, so I do learn my lines and I know what I say, because I think it can be quite irritating when you look for words and you don't get the right words, and then the audience just doesn't laugh about it, and then my accent or my grammar stands in the way of making a good joke. And maybe some bits in the beginning are more improvised when I talk to the people and ask them what they know about Austria. But then the more I get into my set, the more scripted it gets.
So do you think you are quite a scripted kind of comedian because you perform in a language that's not your native tongue? Are you less scripted when you perform in German?
No, I was quite scripted there as well. For me, comedy, and some people are really good to come up spontaneously with that thing, but comedy, I think, is very mathematical. In my point of view, one word makes the joke, and that word has to be at the end. Because if you put that word in the front and then have a bi-sentence, then it's just like, then you lose a laugh. So it's very mathematical. So you have to figure out what word is the punchline and put that last. And then it's naturally, I think, to remember, okay, I have to say this like this. Or if a joke doesn't go well, then you just change the sentence and it suddenly works. So I was scripted in German as well.
I was expecting another answer so I can finish, but I can't distort the truth. This is the truth for you. I haven't managed to ask you more. You have a very interesting life's journey. You've done a lot of things I didn't know about until I read the book about you once were in a jail, you went to LA and stuff, but that those materials prove. But is there anything you'd like to plug, or if not, probably just how people can find you on social media?
Yes, I have. Laughing Labia will start again every first Sunday in October. And every first Sunday in October. Every first Sunday of the
Starting
month.
from October. 1 October.
And yeah, and buy my book.
You can buy it from Amazon. Otherwise, Alice always brings her inventory with her at her comedy show. So maybe go watch her show and get a book. It's a really good Christmas gift. All right. On that note, I'm going to give a big thank you to my guest today, Herzlichen Dank. So coming on the podcast, it's been Alice Frick.
Thank you. Danke.
Ciao.